Doc Slab Audio on music production and audio engineering. Welcome to Doc Slab Audio and our Insights series. I do believe this is the 27th video in our Insights series, and in this video we want to talk about the importance of the ADSR. So this is a very simple concept, and I don't need to make a long video about it, but it seems to be some type of an issue. So the problem here is whenever we're dealing with a natural instrument, say a vocalist or a guitarist or something like that, how they voice things whenever dealing with the ADSR and the ADSR that's inherent in their performances is hugely important. And also whenever you're dealing with any type of VST or MIDI instrument, that really refining that is huge, because it's going to make the difference of whether or not it sounds good or not, or if it sounds unnatural or not. Does that make sense? Or it sounds too exaggerated in some areas or not, depending on whether you're dealing with a natural instrument or not, being say MIDI or VST or something like that. So I mean, it's something that you really need just to think about. I don't need to make a long video about it, because the simple concept, the attack, once the note first hits and the attack up to where it peaks, the decay down to the sustain, and the release, how it releases, possibly like that, possibly straight. The same with the sustain or the decay or the attack, how long they are, the shape of them, the envelope itself. It's hugely important. And always remember that just because we talk about ADSR doesn't mean that it doesn't go like this, down like that, 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 up, down like that, and that is the envelope of sound. Well, it's a little more complicated than a simple ADSR, correct? So, but it's still an envelope of sound. So we really have to keep that in mind, so that whenever we're dealing with any sound, that we look at it in natural sounds, looking for things that are exaggerated there, that are unnatural sounding or exaggerated, that's causing a problem that we address. Does that make sense? But not over editing and over processing, trying to deal with those issues. And the same thing when we're dealing with MIDI. You know, a lot of times make or break when dealing with MIDI is, you know, understanding that concept, so that whenever you're dealing with a rendered sound, that you go after it. You go, okay, now that I've dealt with it as best I could as MIDI information, now I've rendered it, and I'm gonna go back after it again, trying to find any problems that are either exaggerated or unnatural sounding, to try to adjust them to make it sound as natural as possible. Just don't get yourself lost in it, you know, over editing, over processing, and dying, you know, in front of the mixing board trying to fix every dang thing. A good majority of it should be able to be dealt with when you're dealing with the MIDI notes themselves, and whenever you're dealing with the performers, it's better to go after them and go, oh, wait, you're very exaggerated there, or your envelope is not sound really good there. Can you fix that? Or is that just your style? You know, but really understanding that, so that whenever you get in there and you go, okay, I'm really going to deal with this ADSR, the attack, from the time the note begins to where it peaks here, you know, the shape of that, is it straight, is it curved, you know, is it rapid, is it slow? It's huge. It's the same thing with the decay. After it decays down to the sustain time and the shape of that, and as it releases down, how long it is, what is the shape of it, things like that. Really sitting down, and anytime you're dealing with any type of natural or unnatural instrument, that you really focus in that area and go, what does that really sound like? And then go listen to some good production production. Say you're dealing with a violin and you're dealing with a MIDI violin instrument, and you go get some real violin and listen to when some guy's doing staccato, or he's doing long strokes, or he's doing whatever he's doing, and you really listen to the ADSR. What's happening when an attack comes in and the decay and the sustain and the release there? How does mine sound a little bit different than that? What issue, where in there is that a problem that I'm having, so I can go address that issue? So that you'd be surprised how many people I see, it's something really simple like the attack or the release, and they've got some MIDI instrument and they're like, well, you need to fix that, otherwise it's going to sound unnatural, like you're doing something you're not. And different type of articulations in the way they voice the instrument is going to have a different ADSR, whether they're doing, you know, staccato or they're doing something, playing it differently. It's going to sustain, you know, like we talked about vibrato, volume modulations, and frequency modulations. The ADSR is just as important and something you really need to focus on a bit and really get yourself immersed in that, and listening to some really good productions that you see, your top violin productions, vocalists, anything, guitar players, whatever it is, drums, and really listening to that, and then going back and how does my thing sound in close? I mean, you know, sometimes you can sample the stuff and stick it in the DAW right next to your stuff and go, bam, there's my tom, bam, and listen to his tom, bam, or the vocal, yeah, and then there's their vocal, yeah, you know, and sampling the stuff, you know, or VST, you know, violin things, any kind of thing, you can sample it and then, you know, get in there and, you know, try to hear the difference of it, you know, referencing it back and forth, and really looking at your ADSR. What is happening there? How off is it that's making it not sound natural or sound exaggerated or whatever the problem might be, you know, and addressing it. So you can either address it with the performer, or you can address it with the VS instrument, the tools you have to, or after you render it, you can go after it and say there's a little bit of problem with the release or the attack or something, and start going after it with something like the LFO tool or something like that. There's lots of ways of dealing with it. Just be careful you don't over edit and over process it. If it's, I mean, don't kill yourself trying to get it that close. If it's that much work, you're probably going to try to find find a workflow that you can get it done that helps you. Like I have an LFO tool that, you know, on some things it just automatically comes on whenever a note hits, and it shapes the envelope fairly well, you know, and because there's some issues there, right, you know, on the attack or the sustain or the release or something, you know. And there's other tools you can do it with, compressors and expanders and all kinds of things. Just be careful, you know, you don't get yourself lost in it. But it's a huge deal that some people don't talk about ADSR, but they don't really sit down and start doing that, so that whenever they're dealing with any sounds that they're going, now what's happening in ADSR? Does it sound okay? It doesn't sound right. Is that the ADSR? Is there an ADSR issue, you know, or is the envelope much more complicated that I need to sit down and go, whoa, there's a whole lot of stuff going on in that envelope. How am I going to address that? What do I need to do to deal with that, to get that shaped right so it sounds right, and start messing around, either dealing with the performer or dealing with your MIDI instruments and the parameters you have to control or synths, trying to get that correct so that it sounds the way you want it. So I hope that makes that real simple. I didn't want to make a real long video. I just wanted to make a nice short video to get you immersing yourself in actual ADSR issues and really investigating into that and experimenting around it, so that it's not an issue for you when you're composing and you're producing and engineering. So peace, self-love. I certainly hope you enjoyed this next video in our Inside series, and I will see you in the next video.